You're listening to Heal Through Humor, hosted by yours truly, Talia Bombola. I'm a licensed therapist on a mission to help others learn about themselves and laugh along the way. Welcome to another episode of Heal Through Humor. Today, I'm very excited for our guest that we've been messaging for a while, and we finally got 2 dates lined up for her to be on this podcast and for me to be on her podcast, if I can speak. Your Instagram handle is hysterical, Bossy Stassi, right? Did I get that right? Okay, cool. Stassi Betcher?
Yep.
That's okay. I love your name. It's
Nailed
so unique. Yes. Okay. Stassi Betcher, and her, you might have seen one of her reels that went viral. That's how I first connected with you. And it spoke to the soul. You spoke what so many people are thinking of in that seat, watching your partner do. You're just like, okay, manage my own emotions. And he's allowed to do this. And what am I going to do? And so I, without further ado, would love to introduce you. I would love to hear more first, what was behind the thought of that, because you really, I think you opened a lot of our eyes that we're not the only ones who feel that way. So please take it away.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. This has been like weeks in the making. I mean, months probably, at least. Yeah. Couple months in the making. Yeah. Bossy Stassi is my handle, Stassi, for people who don't know how to spell it. And yeah, this one reel went really viral, and I didn't know it would. We just got back from an East Coast to West Coast flight, and the morning after, my kid was napping, and I was like, yeah, I'll make this reel. And just did it in between nap time, and really didn't. I had my own internal thoughts about it, but didn't put much energy or effort thinking it would go. I never thought it would go viral, to the point where I was strategically covering up people's faces on the plane because I was like, that's rude. I need to do that. But now that there's 3.2 million views on it, I feel really bad that there's strangers who didn't get to consent to that. Sorry, guys.
Strangers on a plane, yeah.
You know?
Well,
but they really to their face. Yeah. And if they see themselves, I don't think you could recognize themselves either. So there's that. So what went on behind that? There was already a little self-awareness. So basically the shot is my husband wearing my baby in the middle of the aisle and bouncing the baby. And then, someone's trying to sit down in their seat, so he's really far away, and then starts walking back and forth to like rock the baby to go to sleep. And there was already some self-awareness within that moment for me, because I had this feeling a bunch during the first 6 months of baby's life, where I wanted to rescue my husband from any unpleasant feelings of parenting. So if he was frustrated and he wasn't telling me he was frustrated, like I just could feel it. I knew the energy and the amount of anxiety that I had about any sort of unpleasant feeling he had without him speaking about it. I wanted to save him from that. He didn't need, I didn't want him to feel uncomfortable in the, quietly, of course I don't think this logically, but in my head, I signed him up for this job, which is not true. We made this decision together. He wanted this kid. He loves this, his child. Right. And for me, I was quietly saying, you signed him up for this, and he shouldn't have to suffer with you, so that I would rather fall on my own sword and soak up any negative feelings and just take it all than have him have to have any negative experience. And pretty quickly into parenting, I realized that. And so we had lots of conversations about that in terms of little middle of the night cries, or things where, when do you need to tap out? And he doesn't also vocalize anything. He's very passive. So I would often interpret what was happening and then decide he needed rescued, that he had done it long enough. And so I had to start talking about you have to be vocal here, because there's so much anxiety pulsating through me to save you and baby in this situation, that baby doesn't need to suffer, you don't need to suffer, and I'll just do all the things. And I knew that wasn't sustainable. So it started really early, probably 6 weeks in, that I started talking about that. And then we'd gotten such a good groove. The feelings had gone away. I didn't need to rescue him anymore. We had talked about it enough that was fine. And then we were approaching a year, about 2 weeks out before his first birthday, and those feelings came rushing back on the plane, and I went, oh, I forgot about this. And so that's what was able to inspire the reel. Was not when I was in the midst of it, 6 weeks postpartum, right? I wasn't able to know this would be helpful for people. but when it came back and I remembered that I had this feeling all the time, I was able to like slow down and vocalize what that experience was for me. And I assume, and I want actually like, I don't know exactly who the audience is here, but I'm assuming it's people looking for self-improvement and through laughter, which is great. And like with that, what I realized is if I have a thought or a feeling, someone else does too. And so like, I didn't know who this would connect to, but I can share it and it's going to connect to someone, maybe not everyone. And it actually was accidentally everyone. But like that, I didn't know that was going to happen. I was just trying to connect to that one mom, that one wife, that one partner who was like, that is how I feel too. And it went a lot bigger than I thought ever it would. Like ever.
I was thinking when you were first sharing how much of it is wanting to, the classic therapists here, how much of it is wanting to rescue him from perceived emotional distress, or how much of it is us wanting to rescue ourselves from our own anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's both, right? Like literally even talking about it right now, like my stomach is turning, right? Like it doesn't feel good to know someone else's, right. What I usually project onto him is suffering, right? Like it probably isn't that level of it. Right. But yeah, baby screaming at you that you can't deal with, or you standing in the middle of an aisle, trying to not get in people's way while you're like rocking your baby, like sucks, period. Like, you know, just none of that's fun. And even now I can like manifest those like yucky feelings that like, I want to take away. Right. So like, I'll do the activity so I don't have to sit in this discomfort either.
Yes. And sometimes it's like, what would be like discomfort, hot potato, or like ping pong, depending on how you want to rid yourself of the feeling that we invent what our partner might be going through, which means we're also inventing rescuing them from something. So knowing that, that balance, I would say, is, are they actually feeling what I think they're feeling? And would my help or intervention be rescuing, or would it actually be aid that's being requested? Much different if our partner is saying, hey, I'm really frustrated, could you help? And we're sitting there like, I can't rescue you from that. Sorry. They're like, what? Right. No, I'm literally asking.
I'm asking, I need to be tapped out.
Yeah, exactly. Like so much different. But I think I don't know if you've ever struggled with or like experienced people pleasing or those kinds of tendencies. Former that, now very bossy. So I agree with you on that. Like the passive aggressive people pleaser to like very assertive and feeling bossy in a good way is, I think, a good pipeline, if you will. But those reminiscent feelings still come back. I want to be liked. I want to be in a happy partnership. I don't want them to be, God forbid, they feel the negative emotional or distress towards me, like it's a threat to our nervous system. So there's so much that goes on behind what you really depicted so well in that video. And to your point, if you don't think that it's going to take off like that, in some ways, the pressure is less on. It's sharing that one person rather than how can I pick the perfect graphic, this, that, whatever. That's why I'm so glad we get to talk, because behind the scenes of therapists who are on social media, this is it's really like, this is what really goes on behind the scenes. And we've messaged before, like, should I post this? Should I this? I don't want to do too much self-disclosure, but this is my real life and it's relatable. So I'm so glad that we get to dive into that more, and then everything about, you know, who you see and all of that today too.
Yeah. Yeah. And the last thing in terms of the reel, Kevin watched it, which he's always consenting anytime he is talked about on my account. I've only had one negative comment from a man who wanted to protect Kevin, in the ways in which I was not being nice to him. But he is always, consenting. But as it started going viral, he went, oh my gosh, like the world thinks I was grumpy. Like I wasn't even grumpy. You thought I was grumpy, but like I was totally fine. Like I didn't think you needed to be up. I wasn't thinking about you at all. Right. Like, and that was, and I knew that, like, I actually knew that. But the weird part that was happening while I was sitting in my seat was I was creating a list of all the excuses of why he's better fit for this job. He's smaller than me. He's not going to run into people's like arms as they're like through the aisle. I don't know what else I had come up with. That was like the main one. It was like, he's smaller. It's going to be more comfortable for him. I get to rest for sure. But like there was, he has the carrier on. It's going to be awkward to try to change that in the aisle, like whatever else I had come up with. Like I had a laundry list of justifications on why my partner was doing it instead of me. And he wasn't thinking about any of that. He was just serving his baby as a parent would. But like the amount of discomfort I had was so intense that there was no rest even happening. I was just filming him in the aisle that I didn't even know I was going to share. It's just paying attention to it.
It's not, maybe audacity is not the right word, but it's a very bold choice when we go into that laundry list or all of those projections and assumptions. And I don't know, I've worked with couples on this too, and I've said it in my own sessions. It's like, I don't know what's worse, that you weren't thinking all of those things or that you weren't thinking about me at all. Like how much of a gift that is, that how, and that's my own stuff to work on, is how much I would like to be, how much I am and don't recognize, but how much I would like to be wanted and needed. And in what ways am I inserting myself unnecessarily to meet that need that has nothing at all to do with my partner, like at all. That need would exist and transcend no matter who I was with. That's a me thing, not a him thing.
Absolutely. Oh my God. So true. It's so true. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have to catch ourselves. Yeah.
No, and that's the thing is like, self-awareness is the thing that makes change, right? So like you said, you're a people pleaser, or you used to be a people pleaser, and the pipeline to bossy is amazing. And that's only a little bit true for me, right? Because our instincts are our instincts. And I have been a people pleaser my entire life. I have been self-aware about my people pleasing for a much shorter fraction of that. So if I'm not hyper vigilant about what my default setting is, I am anxious about disapproving somebody, disappointing somebody, not being liked. Today was a great example. I had to cancel a session yesterday, and I rescheduled it for today. And I realized, oh shit, I have an acupuncture appointment at the same time I scheduled the thing. And I was like, I don't want to text the client again. Like, that's so awful. I'll just not talk about acupuncture. I'll just skip it, and I'll say, oops, sorry, acupuncturist. Like, that's where I was going. And that's all people pleasing, right? That's all people pleasing to not address, and perfectionism to not address that, like, I'm human, that I needed to, do something. And so eventually, like, I had to go to my husband and be like, I don't want to ask, like, can I just like skip acupuncture? And he was like, the right answer is to reach out and just say, what can you do? Like, and it worked out fine, but the amount of anxiety I had about that. So the point I'm making is like the default setting is always there, and I have to acknowledge it and then work through it. I know as a therapist, the right answer is just going, I made a mistake again, oopsie. But the human part of me, the one that wants to look perfect and wants to have people like me all the time and never disappoint, would rather skip acupuncture and just worry about that later.
I love that you brought up instinct, because to such a large degree, and part of my crusade is studying evolutionary psychology as well as the more new wave or new age thoughts on psychology, trying to blend them, because we can only get so far. We can only get so far with all of the more up-to-date ideologies, or like neurolinguistic programming and thoughts affect your feelings, affect your actions. Yes, all of those are true. And at a baseline core, we all have instincts as human, like the species of human beings. So I like to balance both, that our instinct typically as women, and having those chemicals coursing through our body the way that they're balanced, and everybody's unique makeup as like a snowflake, if you will. But those drives have us want to be liked, because we don't want to be in the out group socially, because if we're in the out group, we don't get resources and we die. So at some level, that people pleasing instinct is in all humans to survive, right? And then it can get ramped up, it can have overdrive, then the nature and nurture comes into sequence. So how much of this was pruned out in childhood or in adolescence, and how much of this was deeply reinforced and became an ingrained pattern, far beyond being that instinct of, I would like to be liked so I don't die. I think we can all agree with that. But to what degree can I tolerate, and to what degree can I get away from that instinct, also makes a huge difference of like, okay, worst case scenario, I give my clients, and I do this too for myself, like 3 steps. They don't like it, they leave, and I lose a client, and I'll get another one. Okay, which I know none of that's going to happen, but walking myself, like, what's the worst scenario and only giving myself 3 steps to get there is very good and limiting for that people pleasing. Cause I'm like, and the likelihood of that happening is what? It's very slim. Like, I'll be okay. It'll be totally fine. I'll call the acupuncturist and ask to reschedule because I want to prioritize work me right now. Like, working through that, I think, is the human side of being a therapist too.
Such a human side of being a therapist, right? And the wrong thing is like not calling the acupuncturist either and going, oops, a daisy. And I knew that already, but I'd already gone through 18 different excuses I could possibly have for the acupuncturist, which are all kind of lies, you know, and that's all my instinct and going, no. Again, you have to just address your human made a mistake, whatever that solution is. And I don't think people always understand this, but like no therapist is, again, very similar to a snowflake. No therapist is the same. We all might go through a similar education. Each university and program has a different version of this, right? And so like, our instincts are our instincts and we're hardwired for connection. So that's what you're describing in terms of that. We are hardwired. I hate the word, I'm not a people person, because I'm like, nope, you were born to be and you still are. Like, you just have some lived experience. Like, that's not real. Let's start there. And the way you're talking about, like the way the biological version of this, where I go as the therapist is the socialization behind it, right? So we as women have been socialized to be caretakers, nurturers, be connected, and the difference between how typically, especially in the United States, how girls grow up on the playground, socializing and talking and like having little dramas with their friends on the playground and someone getting mad and then like storming off and going and talking to other people. And then 2 weeks later, repairing that and like figuring out that communal aspect. And boys are being socialized to play on the basketball court and say, oh my gosh, your parents are getting a divorce. Let me know. That's so hard. Let me know if you need to talk about it. I'll be here for you, dude. And then they never bring it up again. Like, that's how these typical situations are happening. And so we grew up this way. And as women now, we're showing up going, oh my gosh, this man is struggling on the plane and he needs to support. Like, and my job is to like hold that and nurture that and figure that out and cater to that. And like Kevin's thinking, I have no thoughts or feelings because no one's ever asked me. So why are you even thinking about me?
Yeah.
and so I go deeply into how did we learn this? What's the learned behavior and what were we told to do? And you're going into the biological piece, which is absolutely there. But it's all like the next therapist that we talk to is thinking about the same exact situation in a very different lens. And I don't think people actually realize how drastically different, I'm not even saying like approaches are or like frame of reference, but we all have the like a way of explaining behaviors, thought patterns, and other things too.
That's such a good point to bring up. And I think blending, that's what like the biopsychosocial approach really is, blending all aspects of that. Yep. What are we given? What do we learn? And what do we want on the other side of both of those things? And that's, I think, moving towards, like in psychoanalysis, especially, we think of any behavior as a movement towards growth in some way, even if it's colloquially like dysfunctional or maladaptive for the individual, that could be them still moving towards growth. So being able to talk about balancing the two and more ideologies or like points of view, I guess we could say, that exist is so crucial for the person listening to not only this, but any content they consume, is being mindful. Not everything will fit to or apply to everybody. And even in the way it's presented, we may need some modification to make it land for us as an individual. So being a very wise consumer, that's why I don't really like, minus memes that are hysterical, but that's a caveat, minus those, I don't really like the one size fits all approach because, and also with social media, it's like a very big breeding ground for projection, obviously, because everybody has different interpretations. And the way that I pose a lot of things or post a lot of things is like, here's what I meant, just so you know, like this is where I was going with it. Anything else will be on you. You're welcome to have it, but I'm not going to engage in a fight about it because that's not, I literally told you already what my thing was. So I'm not going to get in a fight about what I don't think it is. Yeah.
And that's that was the hard part for me in terms of, I've had social media, a professional account since 2020. And I've always struggled with that nuance, right? Like I can't tell, like to say like, this is what perfectionism is. And here are the things that you might potentially face. Like step 1, step 2, and here's the carousel, and here's a little thing around it. Like, that was so hard for me because it is nuanced. It is individual. Like, you have to have your own self-reflection. And so it made me so anxious to put anything out there that I thought, yes, I've worked with clients for so long. This is what they generally see. But I have clients come in all the time being like, I think I have ADHD, because I've seen like 4 TikToks and all of them say like this thing. And you're like, oh my God, like, absolutely not. Please, please, please don't do this. Please don't do this. Please not. Let's not add this here. And like in graduate school, they would say like, hey, when you're looking at diagnosis, heads up, you can diagnose every single person you've ever met and every family member, and you will be able to identify 6 diagnoses that sound like you. Like, be careful. Please read these with no understanding that nobody qualifies for any of these, and you are not an expert to be able to qualify these people. So like, TikTok and social media is fucking dangerous in the ways in which we are educating the public. And so what has worked for me is turning my account into, this is Stassi's life. And Stassi is dealing with projection on her husband. Not sometimes you will project on your husband, because I don't want to define that for other people, but I can tell you, I absolutely did that. And let me describe that to you. Yeah, let me tell you my own lived experience. And this absolutely happened to me. And then if you see something, then that, great. Let's add some self-awareness there. Let's connect. Let's be human about it. But the psychoeducation is just, it can be potentially dangerous when it is so much more nuanced.
Yes, I'm so glad that you said that, because this is the shift I don't think we're going to see going away anytime soon. And that's maybe not even what the creators of all these platforms were intending it to be. I think like spreading and like the dissemination of information is a good thing. And for people who previously would not have had access to this at all, I think that's wonderful. And a classic therapist. And I think that we need to have a lot more discernment when it comes to this. And still, much like, I think it was on Craigslist, this might be an odd parallel, but there was a guy who was posing as a gynecologist offering exams and had performed like, I think 50 to 100 or more exams, but definitely had performed exams on women and was not a gynecologist at all, like had rented out an office, whatever else. I don't know why people would be going on Craigslist to find those kinds of exams. That is aside. Yeah. I bring this anecdote up as we don't always know the actual degree or professionalism of who is purporting all of this. And to your point, I think lived experience has a place when it comes to discussing what certain diagnoses or life experiences are like. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And just lived experience alone does not make the only criteria for diagnosing, et cetera. And I really double down on this, what would be the point of the diagnosis? Would it help you to get services? Is it something that would help free you from feeling like you're in a box? Do you feel like it would put you in a box? I like to do more of that existential exploration with clients when they come in with their videos, and I'll have them show me. And I'm like, okay, knowing what I know, I'm like, I don't think this lands for the client. I'm like, but I'm happy to discuss it with you. Yeah. And I use the psychoanalytic diagnostic manual a lot more than the DSM, which, side note, I don't think that anybody should just be able to buy that on Amazon Prime. I think just cosmetic places, you have to put in your cosmetic license to order in bulk off of their websites. They verify it. Same thing should go for some of these other resources that are clinician only. And sometimes I'll whip that out and I'm like, I'm happy to go down the list with you. And I'm happy to break down for you A through D or E or F or J or K or whatever. And then we're going to go and have a discussion about it. And then afterwards, sometimes, rarely, I think, has it led to, yes, that is the case. Sometimes they're like, oh, I didn't realize how many other diagnosis or criteria could also be met by another thing. I didn't realize that it's not due to another disorder piece. They get lab work done and we find out it's actually an endocrinology issue. It's not a mental health. So knowing that, I think it's worthwhile to bring up and be open-minded that your initial gut reaction that something's up with a name for the diagnosis, that might not be accurate, but you might absolutely be spot on that something's going on inside of you that needs to be addressed. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I do hope it sparks self-reflection. And that's, I think, every therapist's intent is self-awareness and self-reflection. But
facts is you absolutely should be talking to a professional about that. And so in terms of being, both of us being in a public forum where we don't get to talk to individuals, there's just it's really exciting to be able to do that, and I love being able to do that. And there's just nuance to it.
Yeah, there's no one size. Even when I do Q&As, there's times where, and I like humor, obviously. So people ask, like, how do you do this? I'm like, how do I do this? That's this. How could one, or how would other people be able to? That could be a laundry list of things. So I even make sure to couch when I'm asked those kinds of questions. This is how I would, but that doesn't mean that's going to work for everybody. We all have different culture, race, socioeconomic status, resources, lived experience, family system, support, like all of those factors that we usually look at in the mental status report that we do as a foundational assessment. Everybody's is usually different. So even if we grow up in the same neighborhood or have even in the same sibling set, we're going to have
I was going to say, I have a twin brother, and the amount of differences between the two of us, it's incredible and like shocking, right? Like, it's not only like in the same sibling set, I have a 5-year difference between my older sister and a 7 years difference between my oldest brother. And I think we have different parents, right? Who they were 7 years ago for the 10-year-old, and then who we were as 10. And then, but with a twin set, it's like, holy shit, we had the same parents at the exact same time. And like the amount of difference between the two of us and the ways in which we were like, not only, just like the paths we went down, the value in education we went down, like lots of different things. And we didn't have different parents. Like, it was the same age, same time. And like, it is incredibly different.
That's such a good point to bring up. I don't know how long ago it was, but I worked on a paper. Was it grad school or college? I can't remember. But I remember sitting there in my poetry class, of all places, and I had this like concept floating around for a while, and finally my teacher drew it on the board, more for poetry, but it's almost like clearly I didn't pay attention in geometry, the like
Me either.
triangles that aren't fully not equilateral, but like they're the ones that stack on top of each other. So basically it's like this, and at the start of one experience, like let's say from 1900 to 2000, 1900 is the big gap here, and it peters off to 2000, but the beginning stages of that in other cultures are just starting or just ending as another is starting. So you like look at this with parental units and stacks, and same thing with why certain generations are raised with certain cultural values or generational values compared to others. And to your point, every parent set is different, even if they're the same exact parents in terms of same humans, their life experiences, their maturity level, their support systems, financial resources, things they've learned about the couple relationship, all of those things are going to hopefully evolve, at least be different year after year, sibling over sibling. And we can grow up in even the same household, but not have the same experience because our parents are different, and let alone their mental health, that can add on to it too. We might not have had the diagnostic ability or the resources if we're having that child many, many years ago, and we might not have the knowledge of what postpartum depression or even postpartum psychosis or any of those other events could be. And it gets written off as crazy, lazy, depressed, whatever else. Yeah, hysterical. I love when I teach that. And I'm hoping this is not an old wives' tale because I've taught it before, but if it is, I'm open for correction, that the creation of the vibrator as a sex toy was actually in office because doctors did not want to have to do manual stimulation for hysteria, because the treatment many, many decades ago was an orgasm for relief of hysteria.
What?
So because they like created it, and now here we are. So yeah.
Trying to change the orgasm gap.
Which I'm not opposed to. I've worked with many couples though where they're like, they feel like in analysis we talk about thirds a lot, that any sort of device like that would be a third, and it could bring up a lot of emotions and experiences of feelings of inadequacy or incompetence or anything like that. But very fascinating when we think about the genesis of certain things and what their purposes were, And to your point about parenting, the resources that are available are widely different year after year. But having twins, you're right. That is the exact same parent, the exact same age and time. That's got to be, not weirdly, but I am enamored when people have twins, because I don't have a twin, but my brother and I are pretty close to being twins in terms of like the telepathy and all of the other like lived experience stuff. So wild when I talk to people who are actually twins. I'm like, tell me what it was like.
And it's so funny because I've had that answer like literally since I was like in kindergarten, right? Like, what's it like to be a twin? And you're like, and like it used to drive me nuts because like, I don't know, what's it like not to have a twin? Yeah, that would be my response. Like, I don't know, like why, like what are you talking about? And then like eventually it became like it's like having a brother, except for that we are in the same grade and never in the same class. So like, like I literally couldn't figure out the awe of it, and I think it's actually very cool. Although my older sister always told me I wasn't special, and she needed me to know that I wasn't special because we weren't identical twins where the eggs split. Mom just had 2 eggs in her belly, so you're not special. You're a fraternal twin, and like you need to know. So that's the upbringing I had.
You're like, so if that just shares any little bit of info about me.
That is like the dynamic with my older sister, and she's my best friend, and that's who I grew up with.
Good. Yes. Yeah. As it should be. Yeah. Yeah. No, the multiple siblings. And I work with only children at times, obviously. And they're like, my least favorite question is when people ask me what that's like, because they're like, I don't have an alternate. Like, what's it like to have a sibling? Both of us will never know.
I don't know what to say here. I want to go back though to a point you had about the Craigslist gynecologist situation.
Yes.
And in terms of like social media and professionals, the other day I just was like washing my face or something, and I thought, what's the difference between, I often see posts all the time, what's the difference between a coach and a therapist? And coaches really like to post that. And we as therapists can be very triggered by the coaching situation, right? Like, and I like, sometimes I get jealous being like, they didn't have to pay as much money as I did. Like they just like got to fast track this. Think about that. Like, and so there's sometimes jealousy, sometimes resentment, and like, I try to respect the profession in whatever box it wants to fit in, especially because people are more open to coaching, life coaching than they are to therapy. There's still a stigma. So, but the other day I thought, what's the difference between coaching and therapy? If I was going to answer that question, and the answer is like the amount of self-awareness work we had to do to get to become a therapist, the amount we had to pull out. And the amount of journals I had to do that were read and graded and then had comments on every week that I had to rewrite answers to those questions so that I could dig deeper. And 3 years of that, right? Like there was so much, the amount of supervision you have afterwards where you're vulnerably sharing what isn't working for you. And people are picking that apart. That's the difference, right? How much the person sitting in front of you knows themselves and has worked so hard to understand the human experience. That's the difference.
I love that you brought this up, because there's the question of what's the difference between therapy and coaching, and then what's the difference between a therapist and a coach, and both have very detailed answers. And your point highlighting that is so accurate. We do so much more in-depth work or in-depth self-awareness, and we are graded, we are journaled. You don't pass the program, hopefully you're not in a very lax program, but like even if you did, there was people in my I was a PsyD at first, and then we were in the master's track as well, that there was people in the program that didn't make it through because of whatever reasons. The administration flagged them because they didn't think it was a good fit. They dropped out because they didn't want it.
Every program has to do. Ours was like the first semester. We all had to have a meeting with the head of the program, and they got to say if we got to continue or not. And it is gatekeeping, but it's gatekeeping to protect future clients and the general public from harm. Like for every program legally, they have to do this.
Yes. Yes. Some I unfortunately have talked to, some don't as much as they should or ought to, whatever word you want to use. Most do, all have to, most do that quite well. And just like in other professions, even if you pass all of the minimum requirements, there are unskilled or unsafe professionals in any profession.
Yes. Coaching,
therapy, doctors, lawyer, we're again human. And then the job or the career are choices of that human being that we have. We're not, I often joke, like, because I've loved being a therapist, it felt like that innate thing of like, I've always known what I wanted to do, which not everybody has. I feel blessed that that was me, but I'll joke. I'm like, I was born and the doctor was like, it's a therapist, like obviously kidding, but that's humor. That sometimes it is so deeply ingrained to want to help. There's multiple different ways to help. And I think if people are very drawn, and I do coaching, and I tried I think it was 2 years ago now. I almost have like a fog from it. But a couple years ago, I was like, you know what? I like the coaching idea more. I think it provides more reach, because many people don't know that when you're a licensed therapist, you're only allowed to see clients as a licensed therapist in whatever state or states you're licensed in. Yeah. So there hopefully are parameters there, but then there's the nuance of, if I can see anybody in the state of California, because that's where I'm licensed to telehealth, if they're not in the office, if the only argument is, well, what if the risk if they're not with you, even if they're in the same state, but telehealth, I can't jump through the screen and help them.
Save them. There's not a single thing I can do for 100%.
No, like, there needs to be other non just bureaucratic reasons for that being a therapist, there's an ethical duty, there's a legal upholding that you have, or there's legal requirements that you have to uphold and adhere to. There's a bit more, I would say actually a lot more gatekeeping than in coaching. Yeah. Not just anybody can call themselves a therapist. Anybody could technically call themselves a coach. And I enjoy the coaching role, but I also know the lane and the limits of what's covered in, this is where like the difference between therapy and coaching versus therapist and coach. Yeah. What you talk about is also different. And I see people, I talked about this on a different podcast, doing like trauma coaching. And I just want to throw my phone in a river, because that is so potentially harmful. If you want to be an ally, a survivor, run your own, like a support group that you tell people like, this is just my lived experience, I'm not a trained professional. We can't stop you from doing that. Yeah. Obviously, no one person can stop you. But if you're the consumer of this, really be mindful. What is the purpose of and the intent of what you're hoping to grow or heal from? Yeah. And which would be a better fit for you? Also, what you said is life coaching or coaching has different stigma.
Yep. And it really does. And I'm also, I say I am a therapist and feminist therapist and women's wellness coach. And what that does is it takes away lines, right? Like bureaucratic lines, because there isn't a national way to become licensed. Anytime, and like if somebody from Tennessee calls me and then from Iowa calls me, right? I have to say no. And so, yes, there's a piece of that. And the way I describe it is like, therapy is a holistic thing. We talk about your lived experience so we can understand who you are and work on future things. Coaching is goal-centered, and we are only talking about the future aspect, right? So we might say, that feedback comes from childhood, and what does that mean? But we don't get to process that deeply. We stay in the center and we move forward, and nothing is medical advice, right? That's the legal difference that in terms of how I'm describing that. And therapy is way fucking more helpful. Like it just is. Like there is a limit to what you can do as a therapist or an educated psychology degree, and then being a coach, right? Like if we can take therapist out of that word for legal reasons, there's still limitations there. I also don't think I think licensing is bullshit, and it's political, and it's gatekeeping, and it costs a shit ton of money, so much money that people don't understand. And I think it's baloney.
Yeah. I think if there were a national, I think it's still good to have some sort of board to do like some sort of check or assessment. Like I think that's helpful, and I think it ideally would be national. I'd be so curious to see what everything would look like if it were, yes, you must go to school, obviously, yes, you must get training and hours, et cetera. I'm all on board for that. Here's it nationally, and maybe state by state, because of different laws and regs of just business ownership, there's going to be nuance to it. But I think if we were able to do things nationally or internationally safely, coaching for the therapists who turn into coaches may not be a thing. Or it may be in a totally different realm. Like, let's say I do like performance coaching for athletes, but in my private practice, I see women who are suffering from or are struggling with postpartum, and I do EMDR. Totally separate areas, no overlap. Like I'm good there versus, again, some people I've seen where I'm like, you can't just throw coaching onto any experience and then work people through it. Because what happens if you do touch on one of those things and uncover it and you don't know to refer out, you don't know the resources, et cetera. I've had that with coaching clients where we arrive at, I think this is a better fit for therapy. We're going to pause. Here are some resources that I would recommend that you avail yourself of. When all that's taken care of, please reach back out and we'll go from there, because I don't want this to make anything worse. The goal is the goal orientation and to make this better, or improvements where you see fit. So I think knowing that, staying in our lanes is also very helpful.
So helpful. And the thing about therapists that people obviously don't know, but our ethics is told to very much allow clients to know that there is a fit for you in lots of different areas. And so there is an ethics around, like, if somebody moves out of state, that you allow them to go have a different relationship with a different therapist, so that they aren't reliant on you. And so there's reasons behind that, a lot of reasons behind that is nuanced, but the idea is that there isn't one match for you. Yes, you did some great work, and that you get to have autonomy and live your life, and you can find that exploration somewhere else. Yeah.
And being able to call, like, I know for some of the teens I've worked with who have gone to college, being able to call both state boards and say, like, they haven't found a good fit yet, and being without care is actually more risky than.
Absolutely.
So you can have some exceptions as long as you get things cleared until they find the better fit, so that you're not doing the client abandonment part of the ethics. Like, this is where knowing all of these things is so helpful, because there are resources. Not everything fits in even the ethical outline. Sometimes there is a brand new thing where they're like, wow, we never, like social media, these policies are just now being written for a lot of mental health professionals. That needs to be discussed. And we might stumble upon something that eventually they're like, oh, well, we all did that at first, but now they're saying we can't. But here's like, we're figuring this out as we go, because media has taken off so quickly.
Yeah. And like when I was in grad school in 2015, so we were lectured being like, do not get on that. Do not go do that. Do not be professional on that. You
never,
do not go do that. And we're like, okay, like not do it. And then 5 years later, I'm like, wait, people are doing it though. Like wait a second. Yeah. Great. Wink. Nuance. There's just nuance. And I don't think boards and people educating us always have the right answer. And like, what the hell? Like, and I don't know, there's just, there's a reason for these things.
Yeah. Yes. And I am grateful for social media, because it allowed us to connect, and we probably would not have met otherwise. So I definitely think it has its positive places, as long as we all know the boundaries and limitations. And even if I am researching I read an article, I like reading a lot. I read an article recently that TikTok has now surpassed Google as a search engine.
Oh gosh.
Which is, I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about that, but maybe it's also generational. Like, I was raised without Google, and then Google came around. So then you're like, oh, I can actually Google this. And now I couldn't imagine living my life without it. Because if I don't know anything, I go right to that. People are like, how are you so smart? I'm like, I read a lot, and I Google anything I don't know, and I commit it to my photographic memory, and I teach it to somebody to reinforce the learning pattern. And that's my answer. I think just knowing a lot, and also knowing what we don't know, and knowing that we don't know everything. And that's where learning and connecting with other professionals to get their perspectives is so crucial for myself and part of my mission. And I think it sounds like it is yours as well, as having that connection, having a podcast, having a way to share your perspective while also honoring it's not the only one, nor is mine the only one.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that we connected over, we've talked lots and lots and lots at this point, but one of the days I was like, hey, is this too personal? Like, before I post, I say, would I share this with a client? Would this be a self-disclosure I would do? And I'm a self-disclosing therapist. I think connecting and sharing is really important. And also, as long as it's not talking about myself because it feels good, right? So there's nuance to this, and lots of therapists do not self-disclose ever. That's totally fine. I'm so into that. That is not my jam. I find it to be really, really connecting and really, really meaningful when it's done appropriately. So on Instagram, that is the thing I'm paying attention to all the time. Would I share this? Would this be a piece of information I would share? And so one day you commented on something, and I was like, hey, can I double check with you, other therapist? Did I go too far? And so social media is wonderful. And like, there's just like, you get so nervous as a therapist, what feels good and what doesn't. And so like, it's so nice to have professionals who are like, I do have a network of professionals now who are paying attention to my Instagram account and ideally not judging me, right? But that are like sitting there, helping me and giving me the feedback when it's appropriate. But, and luckily that's never happened so far. And maybe they're just being nice to me, but like, you know, like it's just nuanced. It's just nuanced. And, I don't know. I don't know why I brought up that point. There was a reason, but that's the point I'm making.
Yeah, I think it's highlighting how social media can have a positive impact on our life. And you have so much, I think this is one of the main things we connected on, that level of self-awareness that we both exercise allows for, if somebody were like, hey, that crossed over the line, the reaction is not like, it wouldn't be an immediate defensiveness. It's like, oh, okay, I thought I double checked. Could you share with me why? Rather than like, no, it's not. Like, let me just shut down immediately. And there's times where I've done this for a while too, that people like comment. My favorite one is, what makes you qualified? And I'm like, I kind of want to do a Stassi reel that literally is just like every training, certification, 3,000 plus hours, degrees, etc. But part of me is like, my time is not best spent. And this is my view. It's my time. I own the rights to it. My time is not best spent proving and getting in the weeds necessarily. If somebody asks like, hey, what grad school, like that's different than like, well, what you that I don't want to play on that level. That's not the energy of my page, nor is that helpful for everybody else who's like, I get so many messages when I do Q&As. I'm like, hey, this is one opinion and I like psychoanalysis. So I ask questions in a much different way than like other trainings might. And I think having a network and access to resources for us as professionals too is helpful, because I love learning from other different theoretical orientations or different styles of therapy and being like, what? Oh, I didn't even know that was an option. Great. If I need to get training to include that, I will. Or if that's just like a narrative therapy question that I can add in, I'm happy to learn more and shift my style to be inclusive of what my clients are needing and wanting, as well as where society is moving towards and how many different topics it does help and can save a lot of strife for our client if we are as well resourced and we have access to a lot of information as possible. I'm not trying to be an expert on everything, but if I'm seeing some themes of ADHD on the rise, or self-diagnosis with like autism or some of the other diagnoses that are floating around, then I spend some time researching, getting the most up-to-date as I possibly can, knowing full well I can't know everything, and being like, okay, I feel like I have a better sense of this if I'm asked these questions. Yeah. And then I can give the client whatever articles I've read too. And I'm like, make a more informed decision for yourself. And here's a psychiatrist or a psychologist if you'd like to go further.
Yep, exactly. So true. And yeah, I think, I don't know, social media is so cool for this. And the fact that I don't even know how many therapists I follow. So many therapists I'm following, right? And truly, none of them are doing the same thing. None of us are doing the same thing, you know? Like, that's the crazy part, is like, we are all very, very snowflakey and unique in that way. Yeah.
I love it. Well, I appreciate all of your time, and I love all the different directions that we went in. I would love to have you back at some point if you're okay with that. And then I look forward to being on your podcast in just a few weeks, I think.
In just like a couple weeks. Yeah. Thank you so much. I would love to come back. Please find me on Bossy Stassi. I have a podcast called Emotionally Unfucked with another therapist, Emily. And yeah, can't wait.
Thank you.
Thanks.